Here's 4 reasons why someone like me who's a new filmmaker would purchase the Sony FX3. The number one reason why I actually bought this camera was because of the dual base ISO. The Sony FX3 has a dual native ISO of 800 and 12,800. So someone like me who's a new filmmaker, I actually work a regular job through the day. So most of the time when I get off work, it's getting dark or is already dark. So what I've learned about that 12,800 base ISO, it's really, really good. It can light up the scene, but low light does not mean no light. You still need to make sure that your scene is being lit properly, or you'll notice that you may see noise in the footage. Number 2, the second thing that I felt was important to me about the FX3, and this was kind of after the fact, after I got the physical camera, was the button layout. On my camera, number 1 is physically mapped to the iris, but I actually changed that. I actually changed number 1 to be manual focus, autofocus continuous. I actually turn that on and off with that button. You can also do this on the lens too as well, but having a physical button on the camera makes it really easy for me to switch between manual focus and autofocus. The number 2 button is mapped to white balance. That's a standard and I just leave it at that. So hitting number 2 is going to immediately bring up the white balance. The number 3 button on the camera is used for ISO. So if you need to change the ISO, you can go in the menu or you can hit the number 3 button and it'll take you right into the ISO settings. Number 4 is actually display LUT on and off. If you're shooting in a log profile, it's going to look really flat. If you're shooting in log, and if you hit number 4, what it'll do is it'll put a Rec 709 look onto the display. So you can actually see how the footage should technically look and not that washed out look that you get when you're using S-Log3. The number 5 button on the camera is mapped to focus magnifier. I actually do use that quite a bit. When I use my Sony a7 IV, I use the focus map feature a lot. So what I use in place of focus map, since this camera doesn't have it, I use the focus magnifier and also use peaking too as well. And the last button, which is number 6, which is actually on the front of the camera, is a second record button. So if you're actually vlogging or you have the camera turned around facing you, sometimes it's hard to get up there and hit that record button on the top. But if you have a record button right in the front of the camera, it makes it really easy to start a recording. So the third thing as a newbie filmmaker that I really enjoy about the Sony FX3 is the menu system. I'll be honest with you, when I first got the camera, I did not like that menu system because I was so used to my Sony a7 IV and just kind of fumbling around through there using the quick menus and stuff like that. The FX3's new menu or cinema menu is really easy to get to all of the settings that a new filmmaker will need to make on the fly in the first 2 menu sections that are set up there. And the 4th thing that made me pick the Sony FX3 was shooting in 4K 60 with no crop. Can I make this work with my Sony a7 IV? Absolutely. The 4K 60 crop, at first, it kind of bothered me. But after I started using it for a while, it actually worked out in my favor because some of the stuff that I was shooting, I needed to get closer to anyway. But there is a unique situation that I have coming up where someone needs me to shoot in 4K 60 really, really wide. That crop would kind of get in the way of this specific project that I'm working on. So having a camera that can shoot 4K 60 and maybe 4K 120 without a huge crop, for most people, you can get away with it. And to be honest with you, I probably could have too. For this particular situation, I did need to be able to shoot really, really wide. And that 1.6 crop that's on the a7 IV, when you shoot in 4K 160, sometimes it can make things a little too tight for certain situations. All right, so if you found this information useful or helpful in any way, please consider hitting that like button and also subscribe. Whenever I create new content, you'll be notified whenever I upload something new. So just to rehash this, there were 4 reasons why I personally purchased the Sony FX3. Number 1 was the dual base ISO. Having that 12,800 is a huge advantage when you don't have total control of the lighting in a specific environment. Number 2, the button layout. The button layout on the Sony FX3 is amazing. And number 3, which is the menu system. The menu system is really intuitive. It makes it super easy for you to get to any of the settings or the main settings that any filmmaker would need to adjust on the fly during a video shoot. And last but not least, number 4 is the Sony FX3 can shoot 4K 60 with no crop. Depending on the situation, probably most people can get away with the crop, but in some situations, it may be a little too tight for you. Either you're gonna need to back up, try to find a super wide lens, or find a camera that shoots 4K 60 with no crop. If you found the information useful and provided any value, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe. So whenever I create new content, you'll be notified. And with that being said, I'll catch everyone at the next episode.